Thank you, everyone, for joining us for our final Alumni Connect of the semester. We are so greatly honored to have our alum and guest, Dr. Stephen D. Chan. He is a class of 1981. Dr. Chan was recently reelected as the president of the Dental Board of California for 2025, the state agency that regulates the profession of dentistry. And he was first appointed by the governor Edmund G. Brown Jr. in 2016, and in 2021 was appointed to a second term by Governor Gavin Newsom. He's a respected leader in dentistry. Dr. Chan has served as president of the California Dental Association, the California Society of Pediatric Dentistry, and the American College of Dentists, the nation's premier honor society for the profession. He is the founder of the California Dental Association Foundation, advancing dental education and access to care. Notably, he remains the only alumnus of both Georgetown University Dental School and Charles R. Drew University to achieve this role. With only 3% of dentists nationwide invited as fellowship, his achievements mark a milestone in dentistry, profession, and leadership. I want to welcome you all as we have a wonderful discussion with Dr. Stephen Chan. Thank you. Hi, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Well, thank you for inviting me to this. Oh my goodness.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for coming today. Defying Gravity, that is the name of this meeting. I wanted to know it's such a powerful title. When you reflect on your journey, what does that phrase mean to you personally and professionally?
Well, thank you, Mariska. When I think about what I've gone through in leadership, um, it hasn't been just a steady climb up Mount Everest. It's been more like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride at Disneyland. There have been sinkholes that appeared out of nowhere, boulders that got thrown in my way, misdirections, and walls that came out of nowhere. But yeah, the tune from Wicked, Defying Gravity, if I can share some of the lyrics that hit me,
Yeah.
something has changed within me. I'm through with playing by the rules of someone else's game. I'm through accepting limits because someone else says they're so. Some things I cannot change, but till I try, I'll never know. So to answer the question, let's share some of the stories and let's see if you see what I saw.
Yes. Well, as a third generation American and the first Asian American to lead the American College of Dentists, how has your heritage shaped your leadership style and approach to service?
Well, I shared the story with Mirshka that the story of my grandfather. I grew up with stories that my grandfather came to this country in the 1800s.
Mhm.
My grandmother apparently came in 1924, and I did some research at the National Archives on her records. It turns out she might have been on the last ship in 1924 that allowed Asian women to come into this country until 1943, almost how many years later? Decades later. So they excluded the Chinese until that time. Now, I also found out through just interviewing my grandmother
Mhm.
that she lost her husband when my dad was only 3 years old.
Mhm.
Now, here she was in a country that she didn't see very many women that looked like her. She couldn't speak the language. She had no skills, and yet she had to raise three preschoolers by herself in LA Chinatown. And can you imagine what they saw back then? And then my dad was only three. He grew up in the streets as a street kid in LA Chinatown. But he grew also to finally get into one of the first classes at USC, University of Southern California, pharmacy school that allowed non-whites
Mhm.
women of gender, and Catholics to allow them to the first classes. So that was pretty remarkable back then. They didn't see too many in public that look like us. I grew up with the voices in my dad's head. You've got to act better, you've got to speak better, you've got to do better just to be seen as an equal. And then I realized, just listening, as I reached each of the ceilings, and
Mhm.
all of us, as we reach each ceiling, realize everyone's watching us.
Wow, everyone was watching us. That is uh, something to really think about. Especially as you've held some of the top positions in some of the most influential dental organizations, you can definitely attest to everyone watching you and your success. Can you share what was the moment that you realized that leadership wasn't just about having a seat at the table, but helping others to reshape it?
Well, thank you. First of all, it's the journey to get there. Lesson number one, fear has been a powerful motivator. I never intended to go into mainstream. I was just
Mhm.
trying to support my family.
Right.
But I discovered myself. I discovered about relationships, and I was given courage by those who saw something in me. I had to learn skills in moving organizations. But I'm not a natural leader. I've had to learn how to do this. Lesson number two, I had to study the landscape. So I picked up not only the notes that were given, but I studied textbooks. I took classes in corporate finance, organizational behavior, institutional marketing, how does power work in organizations, and speech making. I had to learn how to expand my credibility in groups by
Mhm.
studying better than anyone else in the room. You're building what's called social capital among that group and realize you identify yourself and you stratify those that you see in any kind of group. There's a old saying in organizations, you go through storming where you kind of stake out each other in the room and then you normalize what the behaviors are, what you can do, what you're not supposed to do, and then you perform. Lesson number three, as you study the landscape, realize it's not about you. You frame your pitch, what's in it for the rest of the group to buy in. Finally, don't do anything ordinary. Avoid the platitudes. Avoid standing on the pulpit listening to yourself.
Mhm.
You're watching the room, you're reading the room. Then you make your move strategically. Don't
Mhm.
stand on there on your pulpit. Move the audience.
Wow, that's great. Great words. I want to thank everybody for joining us and Dr. Chan today. And I'm going to give the audience some time. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We love to hear from you and want to answer your questions. Dr. Chan is here to answer all questions. So we'll just take a few minutes. If anyone would like to raise their hand, there's a little button down there. I kind of gave you an example of that. Are there any questions in the audience? Let's just take a look. Okay. Well, maybe they'll ask some
Okay.
as we move along. Um, and maybe they can come up with some with this next question. But you've had such an extraordinary um, uh, thank you for that note. You've had such an extraordinary history. Can you share what unique challenges or invisible barriers that you faced as a leader of color or in a profession that has historically lacked diversity at the top? And I think that now, I think with this new um, way that we're living, I think it's very important to ask these questions. And now is very important to get an answer from someone like yourself. Like, what are some of the challenges that you've dealt with being a person of color in a high leadership role?
Oh my goodness. I think there are some stories where when I was elected as, let me start with this. I was elected as president of the American College of Dentists. It's the National Honor Society of this country for dentistry. Only 3% of those that get nominated, 3% of nominations rather, actually are accepted. You can't join. You have to be accepted and then invited to join. So that's
Mhm.
a big piece. So it's 100-year history.
Mhm.
I didn't look like the typical president of the college. And I'll bite my tongue. Remember, I'm in dentistry, so someone knows how to suture my tongue. So, um, but as I was going around the country, well, before that, let me talk about who I was also running, not against, but running at the same time. He was a well-respected, oh my goodness, I looked up to the guy. He happened to be the Speaker of the House, the policymaking body for the state of Tennessee. He also was either the chairman or a member of the American Dental Association Council on Ethics, Bylaws, and Judicial Affairs. So pretty high up there. His cousin was the cabinet member that was Health Human Services. So he had quite a pedigree. I'm just a dentist from Fremont, California. I didn't even look like that. So, but someone saw something in me and someone encouraged me. But as I was going around the country, let me share this one. Some of my hosts were speaking to me very slowly. Oh, and you raise your eyebrows. Well, until I started talking.
Mhm.
So I learned to bridge that. And one of the tools that I used to bridge that, when I would give my remarks to the audience, you should be very honored that you were accepted into this National Honor
Mhm.
Society. Only 3% actually get accepted. You have to have done something pretty remarkable. But then I'd stop and then I'd share with the audience. In my culture, it's not good manners to come any place as a guest empty-handed. I
Wow.
brought fortune cookies for the whole audience. Now, they won't remember my name, but they'll remember the fortune cookies. Had some other stories, and we'll share those later on. But you're constantly proving yourself. And then you also realize when you go through the stratification in a group, then it's time to do something that's not just riding along. You do something that's a legacy. You have an opportunity of doing something that'll last a long time after the curtain is down. And that's one of the choices you have in leadership.
Mhm.
I'll give you another example. In the convocation, there were not that many people of color. You have over 1,000 people in the audience. You have maybe 300 of people that I read about. You have admirals and generals, directors of national agencies, federal agencies. Um, you have people that were in civic leadership, like senators and assembly and representatives, Congress people in there that are getting in. I'm just a kid. So um, in my convocation, when I became president, I get to choose who some of the ceremonial crew is. Now, again, prior to my time, you can imagine what the audience looks like. But I chose to have people of color. I had Pam Alston, who was rising as the president of the National Dental Association. And I had her as one of my symbol carriers. I had women, which were hardly there, carrying some of the banners. I had the Hispanic Dental Association president also carrying one of the banners. Um, I had a dean of the school that was of Iranian descent. It's optics. It's
Mm,
optics. And then it's a cap and gown ceremony. It's the high point of many of us in our profession to be able to say we were a fellow of the American College of Dentists. We've had Medal of Honor winners. We've had Secretary of Health Human Services, Surgeon Generals be the convocation speaker, the Chief Protocol Officer of the United States Congress address us. I had a chance of doing something where, again, optics. Now, I don't know what our audience looks like,
mhm,
but I had to make a long, long reach. I wanted to find the highest Asian American in American history that could make an impact, at least on the audience. Now, many of you may or may not know the name Norman Mineta. Norman Mineta was a cabinet member of a Democratic president as well as a Republican president. He was the director, not the director, the cabinet member during 9/11, when 9/11 hit our country.
mm,
He's the one that had to make the decision. He had to make the decision to close the entire airspace of this country when we didn't understand what was happening to us. There were no manuals,
yes.
no no one to talk to know what to do. He had to make the decision. One of the four mantles of the American College is to demonstrate leadership.
Mhm.
So it is about optics. We can provide teaching moments by just who we are.
Yes, and thank you for talking about those teaching moments. In your role, you've been very pivotal to making those, to taking those times for those teaching moments. With many professionals who are told to wait their turn or that merit will speak for itself, how have you navigated the tension between waiting and advocating for yourself and others?
Let me start with the story of how I got started. Um, I had a lot of time when I got started in practice. It was another recession back there. I was getting started from scratch. I'm a pediatric dentist. I was the first trained pediatric dentist that came from Martin Luther King. And I was hospital trained too.
Okay.
So I was the first in my geographic area to be a trained specialist. Well, I had time on my hands. It was kind of a hostile environment back then. And so I volunteered at Children's Hospital in Oakland,
Mhm.
and I was on the teaching staff there. I was also on the teaching staff at Highland Hospital, the trauma center that's up in Oakland also. But early on, I got to know a lot of people. But then I started getting calls from the Poison Control Center at Children's Hospital. And the calls were about what's in mouthwash. We're getting reports of babies drinking mouthwash.
Mhm.
Okay, what's that all about? Well, babies as young as 2 and 3. Here they see a bottle that's a pretty color. It smells good. It looks like the big people are drinking it. Well, the poison control reports had babies that had esophageal burns, had vomiting and diarrhea, had seizure disorder, had coma. That was pretty scary. So I went through a search. Now, back then, before the internet, first of all, how come they don't have safety caps? Well, safety caps are a later invention. It wasn't invented until the late 1960s. And then not until the 1970s was it actually put on like cleaning fluids and prescription drugs, not on mouthwash. It wasn't considered lethal back then. So when I tried to reach out to the proprietary companies, and I can't say the names, but you can see which big ones there are, it was like looking for the secret formula for Coca-Cola. They wouldn't reveal it. Well, as I worked through it, some of the old guys were encouraging me, why don't you write a resolution to the House of Delegates? Well, that's the policy-making body for dentistry, and they have it in medicine also. So I worked through that. It took me 3 years to research how to do that. Now, I had anesthesia training at King. I had anesthesia training when I went through part of my residency at Children's Hospital, but I couldn't find any of the physiological or pharmacological effects of alcohol as young as 2 and 3 years old. So again, there was no research back then. So took about 3 years to take it through the California Dental Association, and people were standing up and they were arguing back and forth. I didn't even know what was going on. I didn't even know if we were winning or losing. Finally, it came down to a vote, and you could hear the roar of the air conditioning room in that auditorium. It's like about 300 people in that room. They made it, they passed it, but that's just California. They said, now you got to do the American Dental Association. It's like, holy smokes, how do I do that? So I had to learn how to do that. Again, you had people all across the country that were arguing back and forth. Well, I just had to show the reports from the Poison Control Center that look what's happening across the country. There was no internet back then. I had to collect them from writing to a lot of different poison control of the major cities. So in time, it's the evidence that showed what we were trying to do. Again, came down to a vote. People were yelling and screaming before that time. I didn't know if we were going to lose or win on that one. That's how we got mouthwash caps or safety caps. Now, here's the sidebar on that. How do you make a safety cap that's child resistant and yet not old person resistant? So that's one of the cute things. Now, here's a trilogy. Here's the second trilogy. Many of you are probably too young to remember the name Kevin Collins. Now, let's fast forward. I finished dental school and I was getting involved with the Dental Society because that's what specialists do. You don't know anybody, you try to get referrals, and I was trying to meet people. So they had me start to arrange dinner meetings. You go to a local restaurant, you get maybe about two, three tables, 10 people on each table, and you bring a speaker.
Mhm.
So I didn't know anybody in the schools. I was still new yet. So how do I find subjects that would interest people to come? Let's get back to what Kevin Collins was. At the time, there was a national magazine. The national magazine was called Newsweek.
Mhm.
On the cover was a picture of Kevin Collins. He was a fourth grader that was abducted by a stranger on the streets of San Francisco. He was never found.
Hmm.
And that started to have a rash across the country of stranger abducted kids, little kids. So,
So
what
how
I
did you play? How did you? What was your role in that you were talking about mouthwash? Share how did that what was the next steps for that?
well, the mouthwash one was a separate element in there. It's one of the trilogies.
Mm, medical
So,
examiner. Okay.
you know, so with the missing children issue, um, again, I didn't know anybody
Hmm.
in the schools at that time. So I invited the parents of Kevin Collins, who was abducted, to speak at this meeting. The stories were pretty compelling, very, very compelling. But before that, when the staff coordinator was arranging the dinner meetings, she kept saying, "We got to get a bigger room. We're getting requests from law enforcement all across the Bay Area. We're getting the FBI asking to come. We're getting hospital administrators to come. We're getting medical staff asking to come. We're getting hospital administrators to come." We had to we had to get a ballroom in one of the hotels to fit that many people to come in.
Mhm.
When the parents told their story, it was very, very compelling. Now, what's dentistry's role in it? Well, unfortunately, it's identifying the dental records. It was the beginning of opening the question for the National Center of Missing and Exploited Children. Let me start with the last part of the trilogy. In these dinner meetings, this is another one that I had to arrange. Well, let's do a flashback. In the flashback, when I was in high school, I grew up in LA. I went to the Crenshaw, Wilshire area, LA High. My dad knew somebody that worked in the coroner's office of LA County. Now, many of you probably are too young to know the name Thomas Noguchi. I had the chance to go on a career day where you were matched with somebody in some job and you went all day and just kind of shadowed that person. I got matched with this Thomas Noguchi. He was called the coroner to the stars. He was the one that did the autopsies on some of the movie stars back then. Marilyn Monroe, I don't know if you know the names, Marilyn Monroe, William Holden, Natalie Wood. He did the autopsies on RFK Sr., the father, when he was assassinated in LA in one of the hotels. He was, Dr. Noguchi was the highest profile Asian American that I had ever seen. And was able to shadow him. Now, he didn't show me autopsies, but he showed me the labs. He spurred a fascination. How can forensic be like a detective and solve crimes? When he was walking around and introducing me, he was saying, "Here's this man in a three-piece suit," and people were paying respect to this Asian American high profile. And I was watching him, but he kept introducing me as his protege. I'm in high school. So it was a remarkable experience for me. Let's do a fast forward. Fast forward. I was at UCLA undergrad, and in the news, the higher ups seemed like they were getting kind of jealous of his fame and his fortune, and they were trying to fire him. When I was at UCLA, I wrote him a letter. "Thank you for being a role model. Thank you for showing me be the best at what you do." He had 3 degrees in different countries that honored him for his work in forensics. He wrote some of the standards in today's forensic sciences that are the standards still. Be the best at what you do. I wrote a letter again, thanking him for being a role model and teaching me, be the best at what you do. Fast forward. Fast forward. I was doing another dental meeting, and I wrote him a letter, and here it is how many years later, right? Went through college, went through dental school. It's almost 10 years later. And does he know of anyone up in Northern California that can um, share some insights on forensics. Now, this was before the TV series CSI was popular, before forensic was popular. He happened to be the consultant, the medical consultant on this pilot program. It's called Quincy. It was about a medical examiner who was a detective. Um, he was also writing a book, Coroner to the Stars, writing about some of his experiences with some of the very high profile um, cases that he had around the country, including a lot of the movie stars. He was going on the talk shows, he was going on radio talk shows, TV talk shows. Um, it's like, wow, well, I don't even know if he's going to remember me from high school. He called me at home. How did you find me at home? He was telling me about his circuit that he was going on. Back then, and we're talking about almost 30, maybe 40 years ago, he said that his speaking fees were about $5,000 plus his expenses. And I went, oh man, I'm outclassed here. But what he said was because of the letter I wrote to him when I was in college, when he was getting morally trashed in the public, in the
Mhm.
media, he said, I'm going to come up and do the presentation myself. I'm going to have the book company and the publicity company fund my way because of the letter you sent me. Yeah, it taught me a lesson. It taught me a lesson. We filled a bigger ballroom from that.
Mhm.
Okay, that's the trilogy. So I was writing pretty high. I was writing pretty high. So some of the old guys again says, you should run for trustee. I said, I don't even know what that means, but okay. Um,
Mhm.
but then here's where it comes in. The existing trustee at the time at one of the dinner meetings got up and said, his friend, he introduced his friend up into the front of the audience, said, he's going to take over. He's going to take my position. He's the most senior. He knows what he's doing. I went,
Mhm.
uh-oh. It's like, that doesn't look too good for me. At one of the board meetings, he said in front of the audience, this existing trustee said, um, in front of the board, don't run. You're not going to make it. Don't go against me. It's not your
Mhm.
turn. Well, oh, shoot. What do I do now? I went to some of the old guys who I trusted and
Mhm.
asked them, what do I do? And that's where it comes in. He says, you'll never know if you don't try. You'll never know about yourself. Let's go further. Okay. At one of the um, meetings, they got up again at the dinner meetings and said, um, well, if you're going to run, don't run from the floor because you're not going to make it. Don't go against us. We made the other guy an official nominee. So you may not have a chance. And then behind the scenes, I got calls from the other candidate. It's not your turn. Remember, you're a specialist in town. You're new. You got to be careful.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, well, oh shoot, went back to the old guys again. I said, I'm getting threatened now. What do I do? They kept encouraging me. So at the dinner meeting, I submitted, running from the floor, you submit five members of the society that are in good standing. I happen to have gotten five past presidents of that society to support that, the old guys that were encouraging me. The existing trustee said, well, I see that you have the five names, but they have to be here in person to do that. What are you talking about? Here's the whole county, and you're asking these guys to come? They did come. They did come. Then we had to give a speech. What do you say in 5 minutes that's going to persuade all the things that the existing trustee said about his friend to come in. I don't even know what I said. I was so scared. I was scared. Then the existing trustee says, well, since the other guy's the official nominee, we can print his name on the ballot, but anyone that wants to vote for you has to write in your name. Well,
Mm.
holy smokes, now what do I do? Well, that's what they're making up the rules.
Were they making them up on the spot?
They were making them up
Wow.
looking back on the spot.
Wow.
Okay. So when the vote came in, I said, okay, and I just go back to my office and
Mhm.
cry. Um,
Mm.
it turns out that I prevailed 3-1 against the
Wow.
other. So I was riding pretty high.
Yeah.
Then the existing trustee went back to the executive director of the state association and tried to overturn it,
Mhm.
saying, I stacked the vote. There weren't too many of us at that time. He called the executive director called the five past presidents and they refuted what happened. They told what happened with the changing of the rules each time.
Mhm.
And then the existing trustee said, well, since the other guy's more senior than you, then he should take the first 2 years of the 4-year term. You can take the last 2 years, even though the election said something different.
Mm.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
And then I was getting the threats again. You're a specialist in town. I'm getting calls. You're a specialist in town. Be careful.
Wow.
So that was my entry into this.
Wow.
So I don't remember what I said. I was so scared.
Yeah.
Each of the thresholds that I went to, I kind of heard after it that the difference that came up when you did the interviews, there was a recurrent theme that the other people that were running
Mhm.
would say things like, you know who I am, you know what I did,
Mm.
I'm ready for the next one. What I ended up doing is describing the position, describing what I saw, and describing what things can be enhanced by doing X, Y, and Z. The difference was about pedigree and performance.
Mm.
I think the last thing to ask is when you're talking about advocating yourself for others, I've
Yeah.
learned this. When you're outside the walls of a castle,
Mhm.
you can scream, you can yell, and nobody hears you. Once you're inside the gates, inside the walls of the castle, all you have to do is whisper,
Yes.
and it changes things.
Yes. Yes. And you've made a lot of changes since you've been in your roles as the many presidents of the organizations that you've been a leader of. When you've been reappointed, and I want to take pause. I want everybody in the audience to, take advantage of the Q&A. The chat may be disabled, but we do have a Q&A, some Q&A questions that we're going to look at. We've got two questions for you, Dr. Chan. We've got the first one is what did CDU reveal to you about your values and strength and purpose? I think this is a great one for when you were starting to enter into those roles, um, because you had mentioned earlier that uh, you were talking about the barriers when you were at MLK Drew. How did being a part of the CDU family kind of set in stone your values and strength or purpose?
A lot has to do with life experiences. I grew up in the Crenshaw, LA
Yeah.
area of growing up, and my bubble was kind of the farthest west was Santa Monica Beach. The
Mhm,
farthest east was maybe East LA, where my other grandmother lived.
mhm,
But going to Washington, D.C., looking at that experience out there, my class at Georgetown was probably the third class. Now, Georgetown has been around since 1789.
mhm,
My dental school class had, out of 140, um, I think we had four women.
mhm,
We had four or five, maybe five persons of color.
mhm,
Um, and the lessons kept coming that my dad said. Um, and we were treated differently. It was very obtuse. I tell the story too, where I would look at whatever I would perform in the dental things that I do. And I thought, I got this. I got this. But then the instructors would browbeat me. It's like, God, I thought I was going to fail until I took the boards out there where it's blind. In other words, there's no one seeing who you are. And I'm scoring in the 95th percentile. Then I had a better sense of
mhm,
self-worth and I understood what was happening to me.
mhm.
Wasn't exposed to that before.
Mm. And you were exposed to that while you were at CDU, you believe?
No, it's different in South Central LA.
Mm.
In
Mhm,
South Central LA, yes, it's a different environment. We
mhm,
realize parts of LA are different in terms of cultural differences in there. I think the biggest thing that I learned from going to South Central is number one, um, I learned about myself.
mhm,
I learned about humanity.
mm.
I learned about who I am, and I learned about what I need to do. Um, I also learned, well, I thought about going back into medicine. I really did. There's a kick to it. Here you're in a trauma center, and but I had a my first baby at that time.
Mm.
I also learned that I didn't have the personality to see what I saw down there. There were times when I saw things at King in the ER, I
Mhm.
had to walk away. I
Wow.
couldn't, I didn't have the personality to
Wow.
deal with that.
Mm.
So that was my experience. But I saw through different lenses, not through the lens of mainstream. I saw through our lens.
Wow. Yeah. It's very powerful. Thank you for that. And we've got two more questions here. Thank you for this is one from Hillary. Thank you for your valuable insight and stories. Did you have any religious or spiritual tradition or practices that helped you through all of this?
My aunt, who I celebrated last week, her 100th birthday. Um,
Mhm.
her husband, my uncle, was a deacon in a Presbyterian church down in LA. So I grew up with that. To be really frank, no, I didn't have, and I don't have the religious overlay.
Mhm.
I have the human overlay of what I saw down at King. It's the human. It's looking at the faces looking back at me
Mhm.
and having to work through that.
Wow. And we have another one from Alexandra Clemens. We have who says, "Good afternoon, Dr. Chan. I'm a pre-dental student currently in the Masters of Biomedical Science program. Do you have any advice for those hoping to matriculate into higher professional fields? Is there anything that you wish you've done or no?" We I think we can answer. We're going to be able to answer this at the end if you don't mind, because I think
Yeah.
we want to definitely go into the story. So Alexandra, stay tuned. Stay to the end. We've just got a few more questions to ask Dr. Chan, and then we'll open them up more for those more one-on-one questions. So let's go back to you. You have have really opened the door and changed a lot of the standards and policies. You were telling us earlier how when people say wait your turn, that they often change the rules. And even from your own testimony, they'll change the rules right when you're in the room. But you say that your one of the things that you said to me that really stuck with me during our previous conversations was when it comes to merit, your actions will always speak for itself. When it comes, you no matter what you say, your merit is how you act. You or how you perform. You've been reappointed to the Dental Board of California twice and under two different governors. What can you share is the difference between a leadership and how do they intersect with your work now?
Going through leadership, there's several other skills that are outside of what we do as a profession.
Yes.
I've had to learn how to do those. There are, oh my goodness, I've collected books because of my insecurity in
Mhm.
learning how to become a leader. I collected over 400 publications, books on organizational behavior, on business, on leadership,
Mhm.
on presentations, and donated that entire library over my career to University of Pacific, to their
Mhm.
leadership library. To answer the question I've had to learn, I'm still learning. I go back to some of those texts that I still keep because now it means something different because it
Mhm.
comes from life experience now. I know what
Mhm.
the words mean now because I've gone through it now. So um, be the best at what you do. Study it better than anyone else in that room.
Yes, yes, I appreciate that. I received that that message. When it comes to our young emerging leaders, what, particularly those with underrepresented background, who uh, is okay? Let me restate this. What advice do you give to the emerging leaders, particularly those from underrepresented backgrounds who want to influence change but feel discouraged by bureaucracy or slow moving systems?
Well, first of all, remember I had sinkholes, I had walls that
Yes.
threw up in front of me, boulders. I had
Hmm.
stop
Hmm.
signs that were
Yes.
thrown in front of me. Be patient, study it better than anyone else. Find a mentor, find a mentor. Find someone that you can comfortably talk to because you see something ahead of you. You're not sure of what you're seeing, but you can ask, I don't know what I'm seeing, and describe it. They may give you choices that you haven't seen. They may give you implications of your choices. Nothing's in black and white where there's going to be a, a, a win or a lose. There's textures, there's trade-offs, there's things that you have to give up to keep your goal in sight. Um, and then realize as you move through your careers, there's some kid that's looking behind you, asking you, what do I do now? What do I do now? Just as the Wizard of Oz, find someone that can give you courage.
Thank you for that. And as the founder, you have mentioned a story regarding the Wizard of Oz. I'd like you to share that with us. Tell us a little bit about that, because as the founder of the California Dental Association Foundation, what role does philanthropy, mentorship play in expanding access, not just to care, but in leadership? You touched a little bit about mentorship a little bit in the question before, but can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. When I got elected as treasurer of the California Dental Association, here was another incident where fear drove me to look at things. At the time, when I was elected treasurer, they fired the CFO of the California Dental Association, fired the executive director, and I became the one that had to answer those questions. And I'm
Mm,
just a dentist. I'm I had to study. So as I studied the financial records, found that we had three different charities.
mhm,
One was scholarship, one was hardship, the other one was education, and they did different things, and they were kind of ceremonial.
mhm,
The association had multiple agencies that did different things, and they had different programs that were charitable things. So, but they were all doing things differently.
mhm,
I went to the literature and looked at what is a charity? What is a foundation? What is philanthropy? I found a couple of compelling things that drove me. First of all, charities. Charities are vehicles when you help someone that needs a little bit of help. Philanthropy, there was something really profound when I saw this. Philanthropy is investing in mankind. So that was huge. As I went through learning how to put these things together, there was not one vehicle or one agency within the association that did all those different things, but it seemed like they were all connected. So as I did research, I discovered what a foundation was. And trying to put that together, there's a lot of structural parts. There's a lot of IRS parts, a lot of legal parts putting together a new organization. And had to go through, oh my goodness, almost 3 years to learn how to do things like this because it's a whole different universe. Going through the literature in philanthropy, what does that mean? It looked like I was putting together, and Amy, if you can put up this image, it looked like more like Frankenstein's monster trying to put this thing together. But then I hit on it. I called the project Tin Man. Tin Man is the character from The Wizard of Oz that searched for the source of his compassion. By using this as the theme, I could use this to show the the audiences of interest, what we were trying to do. And I learned a couple of things from that. Number one, it was a unifying theme. It brought things under one tent because people now could see what we were trying to see, what we were trying to do. And then what I also learned is that it started to creating its own stories. And that's how things move through word of mouth, letting the audience tell the stories about your story, not what you're telling about your own story, not touting to the marketplace what your virtues are. Let the marketplace do that. And that's where it came in. So, in terms of opening the door, the first part is to open that door. And that's what we found when we started Tin Man. To open the door, we also did things like adopted a lot of business principles. Find a business plan, develop a business plan, run it like a business. You put so much money into something, you made us feel good, and we did good deeds, but did we make any difference in mankind? That's what we were looking for. So, what's return on investment? If we put X amount of dollars into a project, what did the project produce? How did we change something by what we did? I think that
wow.
kind of summarizes where and this has been it's the foundation has been there now for 20 years. I have not been active with it for that time, but it was a fascinating journey to build this and to allow others to see what they saw in the marketplace.
Wow. Thank you for that. We're going to go to some of the Q&A questions. Thank you for these. Let's revisit Alexandra's question because we want to um, we're coming to a close right now. So let's get some of these questions answered. Let's see, what is it? Do you have any advice for those hoping to matriculate into higher professional fields? Is there anything that you wish you would have known or done looking back?
How do you go into different fields? Be the best at what you do, study it better than anyone else.
Yeah.
Um, get books on it. There are books and books and books on it. And
Mhm.
then you'll reveal yourself.
Yeah.
If it's to get entry level. The second thing is what I've come to learn in time is relationships.
Mhm.
People that you interact with, you'll never know when you'll need them or they will need you as you go through your stages of your career in there. Um, and the last thing is oh my goodness, again, it's about relationships. I'm backtrack a little bit. As I was going through the American college, again, I didn't look like the typical leader there, but I had friends in a lot of different areas. And I had friends in the Hispanic Dental Association and the National Dental Association, a lot of the ethnic associations. Now realize the messenger is different than what the mainstream messenger. My role was just to open the door. They never talked to these different organizations before. Now, the other organizations were respectful of the American College, but no one reached out. I could talk to them differently. I can extend my hand to them differently. The first thing is open the door, get inside the walls of the castle.
That itself is very powerful. Network, meet people in your field, get inside those castle walls so that you can make those changes, so you can really bring that chair to the table. I really appreciate that. We have one other question. You've touched on some of this already. However, drawing from your educational background and your career journey and the challenges you've overcome, what advice would you offer to students aspiring to enter into health professions, especially in light of the significant changes occurring at the federal executive level? This might kind of go back to what you were just saying.
Yeah. Oh my goodness, there are so many textures to that part of
Yeah.
it. Um, um, in my journey, um, yes, in your rise through your journey, be the best technically at what you do. Study it better than anyone else. What I've learned when you touch a patient, it's not your healing arts.
Yeah.
You've touched them where they will tell your story. That's where you touch them. Where they tell the story about what you did, not technically, but how you touched them. And then they will tell others that story, and they will tell others that story. It's how you touch lives. I'm at the point in my career where I've had um, younger emerging dentists coming in, physicians too. I'm on the governing board of our regional hospital. I'm the only dentist on there. Uh,
Mhm.
and I do have others that are emerging into the field, and I tell them about touching lives, that
Mhm.
you don't see that later on, oh gosh, I've had time and time again. In fact, I was just on a flight I happened to see, and the kid remembered me. I treated him when he was a baby. He says, Dr. Chan, you told me something, and I did that. I went,
Mm.
wow, holy smokes, you were just a kid. He's my baby. He's one of my babies. But you touch lives. You change someone's pathway. You change and move their direction in this pathway too. You touch lives. The first role of a doctor is not to do your skills. The origin of the word doctor is to teach.
Mm.
Origin is to teach.
Thank
Yeah.
you. So we're coming to the end. One last question, and I encourage anybody if you want to like speak to Stephen Chan. He's willing to stay on for a few more minutes after this meeting. The final question is, what legacy do you hope to leave, not just as a dentist, but as a leader who defied gravity and made space for others to rise with you?
Oh my goodness, multiple textures on that one too. In terms of what do you leave? I think we
Mhm.
talked about this before. When
Mhm.
you study an organization, you study what it does, you find your niche, you find your piece where you can make a difference. And making a difference is not to just sit on the driver's seat.
Mhm.
Making a difference is making a structural difference in what they do, what they see, and changing, touching lives so that they can see it too.
Mhm.
The curtain comes down. They may not even remember my name, but you see what they've done, and you made that shift in that direction. Everything in baby steps. Well, I'm a pediatric dentist too, so that's why baby steps.
Right. Right. One of the things that you said was about how you make people feel, and sometimes they forget what you did. But what touched me was like they'll forget what you did, they'll forget what you said, but they will never forget how you made them feel. So I just wanted
Thank you
to
for that.
say very true for that. I want to thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedule to meet with us. And we have a few announcements that I'd like to share with you all. Thank you to the audience for joining us and Dr. Chan. If you'd like to share your professional perspective, or if there is another alumni that you would like to us to feature, email us at alumni@cdrew.edu. Um, for the follow up to this, and when we post this video, if you want to see the recap, you can follow us on Instagram and LinkedIn. We can move to the next slide. And other events that are coming up next week. We have Transfer Fest for all of our students that are coming in from other schools. And that'll be next on the 29th from 4 to 7 p.m. And finally, we love our alumni volunteers. We are celebrating our 41st annual commencement on May 17th. If you know of any alumni who would like to volunteer, we would love to have you come and support our graduating students. Thank you again,